welcome to another lore video, and although the Power Play update has been delayed until October, the stories that we all presume will lead into that update are trickling back into Galnet. So, as with all the videos in this series, we're going to examine those and also see where the war's at. Utopia failed to protect themselves from Sirius trying to get them to hand over their data by purchasing their suppliers and various other dirty tricks. Maybe the community goal to bring Utopia goods and materials came along at the wrong time, when people were busy with other things, or maybe people weren't interested with neither the cause, or they weren't interested in the rewards, or perhaps even people might have just wanted to see what would happen if Utopia failed to protect themselves from Sirius's attempts to get their hands on their database, but for whatever reason, the community goal was not a success. And so presumably this leaves them open to further intrusions by Sirius as they try to get their hands on Utopia's database. Chairman Lee makes no apology for what Sirius has done and ignores all criticism, trying to distract from his own behaviour by playing the altruism card about Utopia's data helping everybody here and now instead of, as he puts it, in some hypothetical future. As if he cared about anything but monopoly and profit. Pull the other one, Lee. But behind the pre-rehearsed sound bites and Lee's carefully crafted public persona of business as usual, all is not well at Sirius Corporation. In a previous video I said it was odd for Sirius to appear to let it lie that Achilles have wiped out the monopoly on frameshift drives virtually overnight, and I was surprised to see that so far they've done nothing about it. No hostile takeover attempts, no offering mountains of cash, nothing. This article finally states that they have in fact tried all that, and it's finally telling us about it. An aggressive takeover of Achilles was tried to no avail, and they also offered tons of money. They've been buying up lots of companies as well. Any company that has anything to do with aerospace or technology, Sirius have been buying them up. On top of that, an insider from the corporation has described Lee's desire to get Achilles' designs as obsessive and unhinged. The mass buying of companies and suppliers has also led to investors believing that the company's short-term strategy is suffering due to all these purchases with long-term goals that may not pay off. And as a result, the corporation's share price has dropped, investor confidence has dropped, and the question is now, what is Lee prepared to do to get what he wants, and where could that go? On top of corporate wars and takeovers, it looks like assassination attempts are also going to be a feature in Power Play. Only 2 weeks after the attempt to kill Emperor Orissa, another attempt is made on Jerome Archer, the shadow president-in-waiting of the Federation. 3 people were killed in an attempt to blow up the shuttle that took him to a meeting and was waiting to take him back, and he was almost killed walking towards the shuttle when it blew up. The Kumo crew, of all people, are claiming responsibility for this, and you have to wonder what Archon Delane has to gain from it. Perhaps that'll become more clear in time. Is it because Archer is gaining more and more support as he takes on more and more duties in preparation for the T-1000's retirement, and for whatever reason Delane doesn't like that? Although it's mad that Winters isn't president yet, this article does at least suggest that Hudson and Archer are not planning a coup. The article's written as if they're just waiting for it to take office and getting what support they can for themselves in the meantime. Archer, as a career politician, will absolutely use this attempt on his life to gain more support, and it could be even an attempt to frame Winters yet, but we'll see. The same article also says that Nakato Kane, Prime Minister Edmund Mahon's opposite number in the alliance, is also gaining a lot of support. Mahon's policy of working with Sirius is the biggest and most contentious issue, with Kane having always been against it, but other policies are in the firing line as well, including the electoral system itself. She's been gaining support from all sectors of society, including local businesses, larger organisations, and political bodies who all want to be able to elect their own leaders, as opposed to electing an assembly who then chooses a leader, and for the alliance to not be beholden to mega corporations but be governed more as it was in the days when it was still the Galactic Cooperative. The old worlds are specifically mentioned in this context. This could be seen as a backwards regressive step, but I don't think this is just about revisionism. A desire to return to some rose-tinted version of the past that never actually existed, invented by people who were never the victims of its own inequalities at the time. As a British person who grew up with a similar system, I don't see the big deal about electing leaders. Over here we elect the party we want in power and they elect their own leader. Our Prime Minister is not like the President in other countries. They have no power without the party behind them. And in fact, you could argue that electing people for their personalities instead of their policies and what the party as a whole can achieve is just as bad, if not worse, considering how many nutters it's put in charge over the years while turning every election into a circus. So to me, electing the actual leader of the party in power isn't the massive issue it is to other people, and it's trivial compared to the far more important issue of how much power that leader has without their party behind them, which ideally should be none at all. So that part I don't have a problem with, but there are other things where I do think the alliance has brought trouble on themselves. They decided to base a large part of their economy around metalloys. I'm not a political or economic genius, but you don't have to be to see that any economy based on materials stolen from aliens who are extremely protected towards those materials is off to a bad start. And that's before people like Sirius get involved. The wholesale plundering of metalloys from Thargoid barnacle sites is still thought to be the reason why the Thargoids began attacking stations in the first place, way back in December 3303. 7 years ago now. The first station attack was December the 15th, 3303, so that's over 7 years of the Alliance running a dodgy economy based on stealing from justifiably protective aliens with superior hyperspace technology. Like I said, I'm no economic guru, I have no formal qualifications in the field, but I'm pretty sure nobody ever taught that one as a good strategy in economics class. Which brings us to the Thargoids and the war. In the last couple of weeks we've had another adjustment to the war machine with the number of counter-strike systems affected by Titan pod rescues reduced to 15, and several difficulty tweaks to the controls and the spire sites. This continues the mixed messages of what I'm now thinking of as Schrödinger's war. Simultaneously a war that we're told people want over with, and also one that we shouldn't get complacent about, which we never have, because there could be more to come. The question is, what are all these small delays and micromanagement for? It can't be to stop us killing the 2 remaining Titans before power play comes in, because that's not going to happen, even with a delay until October. Raijin, maybe, it'll be touch and go, but Casio, no chance. By all estimates so far it won't go down till January at least, by which time power play will have been out for 3 months. We're being micromanaged to reach a certain point and no further by the time power play comes in, but with no idea what it's all in aid of. And then this week we've had 2 hints about something happening. Firstly, this article from Aidan Tanner from Aegis, telling everybody to be wary of some kind of Thargoid counterattack on key military locations behind the front lines. This is a bit ironic, because the now mysteriously vanished AX reactivation missions were 2 military settlements in control systems, and we never got an explanation for why they just disappeared, even though the Banshees and Revenants are still there. So, as you might expect, this kicked off a lot of speculation, with many players thinking that whatever it might be was going to happen this week. What form it might take, that was anyone's guess. Another spontaneous 30 alerts seemed unlikely from context, so perhaps some more invasions, because at the moment we're getting 2 alerts and 6 invasions every week, which are normally done by the weekend, and a number of active ports in counter-strikes to fight at, but with no rush to complete those because they don't expire, although they do lose progress every week that they're not cleared. Whatever this ominous message means, nothing unusual happened on Thursday, so it's nothing like that. Or at least, not yet. Nevertheless, it's one of the things that have happened this week that hint at something new going on. The second thing has been covered this week already by Galnet News Digest and Burr and possibly others as well. 3 megaships have scheduled jumps to a white dwarf system near Shinrata Desra. Operation Witch Hunt reported that the azimuth megaship Musashi is going to jump to V886 Centauri. They're going to use the time it's away to try and kick Azimuth out of the system they and the Musashi are currently in, Z-Wangda. Azimuth are not a native faction there, so they could be evicted from it now the megaship's leaving, with a lot of BGS work. And I've linked to Operation Witch Hunt's Discord below if you want to help them with that. Also jumping to V886 Centauri are the Sirius megaship, Spirit of Laelaps, and one of the rescue ships, the Cornwallis. The Cornwallis isn't one of the rescue ships we take passengers and wounded missions to, so it won't affect rescue operations, and there are still plenty of other rescue ships for taking pods to from the Titans or any samples that you pick up, so it won't be missed by anybody using it for war work, but it is a point of curiosity. It has been noted, it has been raised by players, so there you have it. Fleet carriers and players in their ships have jumped over to see what's what, but so far there are no clues about why two corporations and a rescue ship are going there. Nothing in particular about the system says military target. It has a military ground port, but so do many other systems. There isn't anything that stands out. But because it's only 11 light years from Shinrata, many players believe that this is where the Thargoid attack will happen, as per the message from Tanner in Galnet. And that could be what this is, but I have reason to doubt this personally. All of these speculations assume that the Thargoids understand the significance of places like Shinrata, Sol and so on, when there's no evidence they do. We've been told in the lore that the Thargoids appear to have no interest or even understanding of our political and social structures at all, and there's no evidence to suggest that they even think that way or understand that way of thinking. Nor is going to any of those places evidence in itself that the Thargoids have suddenly learned about any meaning those places have for us. If they are the hive mind the lore says they are, they wouldn't even have that mindset and would probably find it difficult, if not impossible, to really understand. Just as we can't really understand what being part of a hive mind is like, we can only construct a rough idea of what it might be like from our imagination, but reality is rarely as we imagine it to be, and theory and practice are two very different things. So I find these speculations to be very human egocentric, as if the whole universe should care about something just because we do. And actually, I don't think the aliens know or care at all. If they analyse us in any way, it seems to go no further than in terms of military strength, which they can do by simply observing the build-up of forces anywhere and watching where all the combat pilots go. But the idea that they understand and care about us enough to deliberately aim at psychological targets, this is without foundation for me. And even if they did understand that part of us, they should know that destroying anything with significance for us, psychologically or culturally, far from demoralising us, it would only make us more determined to wipe them out. So if that really is their game, if they really are starting to think about us that way, then they've still got a lot to learn. But the biggest problem is the same as it's always been, ever since we started thinking about extraterrestrials. Ever since the first person tried writing a story about another species from another world. We cannot imagine anything truly alien by definition. It's alien. I know that sounds like, well, duh, obviously, but let's stop being flippant for a moment and think properly about what that word really means. It's outside our experience. It's outside our imagination. It's even outside our ability to express it. So every alien in science fiction is humanized in some way, because we've only got our own terminology to use when describing it, and without that, we have no understanding and no frame of reference, or even any point of contact to begin understanding with. FDev have gone the route of minimalist information, and making all of their actions specific in some ways but very vague in others. So we can see in broad strokes what they're doing, and we can work out the mechanics of things like the war machine, but we're left none the wiser about their overall strategy and philosophy, or even if they have one. There was a Polish science fiction writer called Stanislaw Lem, and he was obsessed with this, and he often criticised science fiction for not having aliens that were alien enough. But when he tried writing about them himself, he ran into the reason why trying to do it doesn't work. Because the results were full of new words that he had to create, and ideas that were so intangible that the reader couldn't make a narrative connection to them. You just end up with something so obscure and incomprehensible that you can't get a handle on it at all. And with no point of contact for the reader, it's not a story. It's a problem with a lot of modern writers too, for a slightly different but still related reason. Instead of getting wrapped up in trying to be different and alien, they get so wrapped up in world building, character building, and avoiding what they see as cliches that they make the same mistake. They forget that somewhere along the way they're supposed to be telling a story, and the result is something that's very well constructed, but not very engaging or fun to actually read. Another problem is that unlike in the 70s when science fiction and fantasy were still relatively new, and not considered to be mainstream television compared to your soap operas, game shows, cop shows, hospital shows, and so on. Since the 80s, with all the movies, books, TV shows, video games, and even music that's been fantasy or science fiction oriented in the last 40 years, science fiction and fantasy has now become a much bigger part of mainstream entertainment. Most of the box office films have a science fiction or fantasy element to them, the ones that really smash the records, and most modern shows, even if they're not full-on science fiction or fantasy, often have some of those elements in them, whether it's time travel, paranormal events, psychic powers, or whatever. And now there's very much a sense in the viewing and listening audience, that game-playing audience even, that we've seen it all before. And anyone coming out with any story now will probably be told it's derivative of something, even if it's not, because the writer hasn't actually seen or heard or read or played what it's supposedly derivative of. I think FDev are fully aware of this, and are maybe a little paranoid about giving us too many details because they know that whatever they say or do, people will work out every permutation and every possibility of where it could go from there. If you think of an episode of a popular show, after that episode, people go online and discuss every single possibility about what will happen next. So someone's going to be right, purely because every possibility gets thrashed out, and then it's just waiting to see which one they go with. So I think FDev are very wary of doing things that are too predictable and obvious, so they go the same route and keep everybody guessing until they say which possibility actually plays out. Which is another reason why when people go for the obvious connections, that I think there's always some room for doubt, there's always room for other explanations, and I don't just jump at the first one that comes to mind. For myself, I'd rather they stopped being paranoid about being derivative, showed some confidence in their own lore, because they have a ton of good lore already, and just told a good story that builds on it. Which for the most part I think they do when we get them. Weeks of no stories happen too often, so it is good to see them picking up again. So with all that said, do these 3 megaships have anything to do with Tanner's warning, or is this something else? People are connecting it with Tanner's message, but is that just people reading into things again, putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5? So far there's nothing in Galnet about the megaships jumping, so could this be about something else? And if so, what? Perhaps the involvement of Azimuth means it could be something to do with salvation. And Sirius are desperate to get hold of the consciousness transfer technology that so far only Salvation is said to have managed to get working. Plus, they also have a presence there. Sirius Corporation is one of the factions in V866 Centauri, so that could explain why they're going. But then why's the rescue ship going? Let's go full on tinfoil just for fun. Salvation has contacted Azimuth saying that consciousness transfer works, and now he wants to transfer himself into a new body, which perhaps he's had cloned for him, or perhaps Azimuth have done this in readiness for his return. Azimuth jump to his location and pay one of the rescue ships to go with them so they can use its medical facilities. Sirius doesn't know exactly what's going on, but guess it's got something to do with Salvation, and because he's the only person to have got anywhere with consciousness transfer as far as anybody knows, and Sirius are desperate to get hold of that, they're following Azimuth to see what they're up to, and maybe planning to intercept or even capture Salvation if he's there. Alright, so that's out there, but the point is, don't go for the first connection you can think of and then insist it must be true because you didn't think of any other possibilities, or just want it to be that one because it's the outcome you want the most. Until it's actually literally connected by FDev in the game, it hasn't happened yet. But the wider context of these or any other changes to the war is in terms of all this micromanagement and gerrymandering of the war machine. Is it important for some reason to have at least 2 Titans still active when the power play update drops? And if so, why? Is it just a misjudgment based on a false impression that we could take out both remaining Titans before then? That seems unlikely, but it wouldn't be the first time they've changed something with little regard for what's actually happening or how the people actually fighting the war are working, and then made a snap decision after only skim reading the situation. I doubt it though. I'm wondering if there might be some new war content that they want to put in, and they want at least 2 Titans left for some reason when they do it. But again, all we can do is wait for the power play update to drop, but perhaps the power play update isn't just a power play update, but a bit of a war update as well. Will there be some new stage of the war to come after we've killed all the Titans? Or will we kill Casio sometime around January to February and then that'll be that? War over, time to go exploring instead if you have no interest in power play. We're all flying in a summer Mandalay, no more Thargoids for a year or two. Your guess is as good as mine right now. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.